This episode of Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet is brought to you by Hulu Plus. For a free 2-week trial, extra week if you're paying attention, use the URL huluplus.com/GameBreaker and get your stream on.
GameBreaker TV.
Every time I hear that music, I'm just ready to go, Forehand. The music does something to me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet, episode 42 for April 9th, 2014. You're watching GameBreaker. I'm Mike Byrne, and today we've got a couple patch notes to go over. Really, seriously, we're drowning in freaking patch notes. Somebody send help. Joining me to go over them, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Farhan Siddiqui.
Yep. This is like my birthday. It's come early. Got so many patch notes.
The patch notes, they make Mr. Farhan Siddiqui's heart flutter. All right, so let's go over them. And before we get to the patch notes, though, last week I had asked you, when's the hype train going to start? When are we going to start seeing, now that other games have come out, it's time to push, and apparently we are. Here we go. The hype train is this at a bus stop? Is that a garbage can?
You know what? I'm not really sure what it is exactly.
I don't.
Apparently it's in Boston, though. They're getting ready for something. Something's happening soon. Right?
I don't. Something is happening, and in the Boston area, and so we'll label garbage cans. But if you haven't checked it out, the PAX East streaming schedule is up, and I think day one had like 2 or 3 different WildStar pieces on it. So it's nice to see it finally rolling, and man, did they unload patch notes on us to show that the updates, they are still coming. Seriously, they're just, at this point, I think they're just showing off forehand. I'm going to scroll these while you talk about how many there are here.
Yeah, basically they decided that every single little change that they possibly could make, they're going to have a line for that. They're just like, okay, we changed the color of that guy's hat. So I think that deserves a patch note.
Yeah, seriously, look here, chat. This is my scroll bar right here. This little tiny box on the right. That's patch notes. Obviously a ton of stuff to cover. So let's kind of get started, or we're going to be here all day. Completely revamped UI. If you missed that episode, I think it was 2 or 3 episodes back, you and I dissected the new UI and compared it to the old one. We love the new UI. We showed those screenshots a few episodes ago. Look great. Absolutely needed, right? I mean, this was a huge complaint for a lot of players.
Yeah, and it's also something that with like the beta pre-orders going, the beta weekends going, that was something that a lot of times, I was seeing on some of the more general websites in the comments, people were like, this UI is terrible. And I mean, it's not something that was completely clear to someone who hasn't followed WildStar that, oh, no, that's just temp UI. It's going to get completely changed in just a couple weeks. And I mean, I get it from a Carbine standpoint, from a development standpoint. It doesn't make sense to like sink a lot of resources into like making small updates, sorry about that, to a
Chat,
UI you're going to completely...
Stop pinging Farhan during the show. He will call all of you ladies back after the show.
It doesn't make sense to make a lot of big changes. Like, there was like a lot of usability issues, there were bugs, a bunch of stuff. Like, one of the biggest things, like if anyone saw, there were a couple videos that came out from this past beta weekend of people trying war plots out and getting them going, and the frame rate is obviously like somewhat terrible. But a lot of that is actually because of the add-ons. Like you could actually improve. It wasn't because of like, oh, too many particle effects or too much engine stuff or something on the server side. It was actually just the add-on was chugging the game down because it was such old code. It's like some of these add-ons hadn't been updated in like 5-6 months. And I mean, like, okay, I get it from some standpoint that you shouldn't update those things, but it was definitely having a negative impact on the game
Yeah.
and on the reception of the game. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to getting my hands on the new UI.
Stun breakout. And chat, these are just obviously way too long for us to go over every single thing here. And
Yes.
some of them are, like you said, Farhan, some of them are really minute, and you're kind of like, well, did that really need to be there? Check them out, check them out, check them out. I'll throw a link in the description for the show if you're not watching live. So that you
Get a
can
sandwich.
get that.
Just
get a
like you need a snack
Get
as you
a
were going through that.
snack.
I read it through it in one sitting. I was so exhausted by that.
grab a beer. But we're going to try and focus on some of the key ones here. And one of the big ones, big thing, and I bitched about this back when we saw it in the back in the dev speak way back when, was the whole stun breaking mechanic and spamming, one key to lessen the time of your stun and everything. That's gone. Were you okay with it? I kind of, as soon as I saw it on DevSpeak, I was like, yeah, I appreciate what they're trying to do and make it more engaging, but just sitting there hitting one button didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll just own up to it. I macroed that, I was like, okay. Hold middle mouse button is mash F as fast as you can, and like it's because like I literally just like when I try to do it and my hand cramps up whenever I do it. So I'm like, I'm not gonna make myself be in pain just to mash on some buttons. So whatever. It's like it makes no difference, and whatever, they had like a thing in the game so that if you macroed it, it wouldn't give you a big advantage anyway over someone who didn't have a crampy hand or whatever. That like if you're mashing the button. So yeah, I actually really appreciate that they did decide to change it. I'm a little bit disappointed with what they ended up with, just because, like, what was it? In some sort of interview or AMA or something, they were talking about ideas oh, we want to change the stun breakout, but one of the so they threw out this like crazy idea, which probably is like a wall of crazy kind of idea. That's like when you get stunned, you have like a ghost spirit of yourself get knocked backwards in the world, and you actually have to run up to your body to like get back into your body to assume control. So it like has like an interesting like environmental gameplay in there. Now it's like, okay, they're gonna pick a random direction, WASD, and you have to push and hold that one. So at least I don't have to mash my fingers, but now I have to like.
I will say, though, that I do like this better than the spamming the one button. I like that they're thinking about ways to make stun breaking more interactive rather than I'm stunned. Do I have something on cooldown? Press 5. Great. I don't have cooldown. Well, then I'll just chill here for 15 seconds and let it run its course. I like that there's something a little more interactive. It may not provide you a huge boost or a huge boon in offense or defense if you become really good at it versus people that aren't, but it'll give you a little bit of an edge, and at least you're not sitting there watching a buff or a debuff tick down before you can take your next action. So yeah, what they're going to do is forward, back, left, and right. They're going to flash a random one on the screen, if I read this right, and you're going to hold it down, whatever they display, until they display another one, and you'll keep switching.
There's like a Vine or something of the actual new layout. One of the community managers posted like the thing just because people were wondering what it will actually look like. What it actually shows is like the pyramid layout of like WASD kind of thing in an old pyramid, and then one of them has the keybind that you have set for that direction like set, and the other ones are just like red squares, so you just know immediately by looking at that thing, okay, it's forward, okay, it's back, or whatever, and you can just push that keybind and hold it down. Just to address one PC Gamer's thing in chat, like the macro was totally noticeable compared to people who didn't. You actually could like set a secondary keybind for the mashing thing. Like let's say it's F by default, you set G as like a secondary keybind. You could just alternate F G F G F G, and that would easily get you to the maximum, like the macro limit. But I mean, yeah, that's sort of finicky and whatever. It's been replaced, no big deal.
It is kind of weird though that back is an option here, I think, that's usually a button that and oh my god, when I played this in May and did a video on it, I got slaughtered on the internet because we had no idea the setup we were going to be playing with or anything. It was just like, get in there, get footage, and get out before they tell you can't have it, right? And I got yelled at for clicking on abilities and backpedaling while I'm doing quests and everything. But this is a button that normally most of us unbind now. So I think it is kind of weird that this one's in the rotation. I'm going to say now that Carbine is now pro backpedaling.
They are actually because I feel like WildStar is actually like the first MMO where I can definitively say like no, you actually probably want to actually keep backpedal keybound. Even this CC aside, you actually it's somewhat important because you actually have to aim your telegraph. They're like tied to your character's facing. So if you want to shoot while you're moving away from something, you're like if you're a spell slinger, you have a narrow telegraph. You can't really strafe and like shoot at 90 degrees to your side like you can in other like tab target MMOs. So yeah, like strafing isn't always better than backpedaling because you might want to actually shoot while you're moving. So yeah.
Moving on. Cool little system. I'm with you. Where did we hear that? Because I remember that whole ghost jumping back into your body type thing. I could remember where
it was
I heard
an AMA or something.
Yeah, something like that.
That would have been so much cooler.
I think it would have too. But I like this better than spamming F. So I'll take the happy middle ground and move on my merry way. PvP gear. After we dissected it a few episodes ago, it totally got revamped here. Do we need another flowchart here? Do we have a Farhand special chart for this one, or can we break down these changes without having to mind map it?
The changes are pretty significant, but as far as it affects the majority of players, like obviously everyone's gear is going to get wiped. So as far as people who have changes happening to their gear, it's like, okay, well, you don't have that gear at launch anyway, so no big deal. The biggest thing is just like conceptually, PvP gear is going to be a very significant advantage in PvP compared to PvE because you're going to be taking a lot less damage and you'll be going to be doing quite a bit more damage compared to someone who isn't wearing that gear. And last week I went into the numbers a little bit about how I think that you'll still be able to do like open world questing while you're wearing PvP gear without really having too much trouble. But it is something that still worries me a little bit about, for the average player, like if it takes on a PvE server or so like if both sides had the same amount of PvP gear on, if it takes like 15 seconds for a stalker to gank you while you're killing a mob, it's going to take like 5 if the stalker has PvP gear and you don't. So it's like, but I guess on PvP servers you're actually going to have to have that PvP gear. Just for open world. Unless you don't mind getting ganked, I don't know.
Yeah, if getting ganked is your thing, then it's perfect.
If that's your thing, then hey.
Assault power and the support bar also got changed. Now, you had already started drawing up your Excels and your PowerPoints and everything. When I read this, I was like, oh, great, he's going to have to start all over for a lot of this stuff. Did it ruin all of your flowcharts as far as the assault power and support bar stats being changed across the board?
I think I'm going to have to wait to get into the game to actually see exactly what the change meant. But based on it being like a really minor patch note, it's like a subheading. It's like underneath
it's
a patch note about
it's
like
hidden.
A food buff. So it's like this. It's sort of hidden in there. I actually don't think it has anything to do with like it's not like you're just suddenly going to have double the amount of assault power or support power. It actually has to do with there's a few item slots that actually could have that as one of the stats. Like assault power could just be a straight stat on a weapon attachment, for example. And before, like if it was at 0.5, I didn't know what the number was before. To give an example, comparatively for like a medic, tech gave you 0.5 assault power per point of tech. So assault power would actually be exactly the same whether it was a tech on your piece of item or actually assault power, which seems a little bit weird because like tech has like milestones, it has like other stuff going for it, whereas the assault power is just assault power. So I think that it's like a very minor change that just makes it so that for the runes, for the affixes, for the buffs, anything that just normally gave you a little bit of assault power or support power, those things are just going to be a little bit more strong so that you don't feel like, oh, I wish I had Moxie or I wish I had Brutality or whatever your main assault power stat is. So it's actually a pretty minor change.
On the same kind of changes and rebalancing, though, runes and rune sets, they also had a balance swipe. I mean, everything at this point in beta is getting the balance swiping now, which is good. It shows that this isn't just a marketing beta. This is we still have work to do beta, which I really like to see while things still have the beta tag. That's nice. So runes and rune sets, they got a balance tweak. I mean, there's not really too much to talk about there. We could probably just skip over that one.
No.
Wait,
don't.
why?
What?
Do you actually have something on there?
I want to talk about this just because I don't think people realize, especially like if you're just like doing like a very early gameplay. Like if you played up to 1 through 15 or so, you don't realize that runes are actually somewhat important, especially because the rune tutorial, at least how it was in beta. I don't know if they've changed it, but at least how it was, say, 2 months ago, it just is like so confusing that you're like, I don't want to even know about this system. I'm just going to ignore it because it was so weird. And it's actually it's like the first time that I think I've ever failed a tutorial in an MMO.
Chat room chart incoming in 3, 2, 1.
Chart.
All right, walk me through this. You wanted to cover this an awful
Yes.
lot, so walk me through this here.
Okay, so this is just like an example of like rune sets for a DPS stalker. I actually was like trying to think of like a way to explain runes a little bit, just like in a fun way. So I started drawing this thing out on a damn whiteboard, and then I brought it in front of the camera. I'm like, this is terrible trying to hold a whiteboard. Wow. So like, okay, I'll just make a chart, and then it started getting a lot more complex because once you start doing it in Excel, then it's like, I can add so much data so easily that it's just like, bam. So let's just put it all in there. So anyway, the way that runes work is like, if you think of it as like gem slots or some sort of slot in a piece of gear. Like let's say you have a chest piece, it might have 4 slots for you to put runes into. That's pretty standard in a lot of MMOs. You have like a little bit of gear customization.
Yeah, I mean, the gemming, the socketing, all that stuff.
Yeah, sockets. Where it starts to branch off a little bit is that you have an element associated with each socket or slot. And so, like, it might be an earth slot, it might be a fire slot. There is a slot called an omni slot, which, like, you can put anything into it, but other than that, like, okay, most of the time you're going to have an elemental slot, so it limits what you can put into it. So then you're like, okay, well, that's interesting, but all right. Then you have that on gear. So normally, if you looked at like a database site like Wowhead or ESOHead or whatever other website that has these things, you look at a chest piece and you're like, okay, it has 3 sockets or whatever, and I know that, and I can start planning it or something. Not in WildStar. In WildStar, it's random how many runes you'll get. I mean, like there's like something like a chest could roll between 3 and 5, for example, for an epic one or something like that, and the type of rune is also random. So if you get lucky, you might get all the rune types that you want, and if you're not, then you might get the ones that you don't want quite as much.
Oh,
so that's like,
God, I'm screwed.
I know, right? So then what we got here then is that, okay, so different elements. So like let's say you wanted it's a chart up. I can't really tell. Okay, so if let's say you wanted a critical rune, you want to increase your crit as a stalker. You probably want to fill in the fire, logic, life, and fusion runes, because those are the ones that you have a rune set associated with them. I haven't even gotten into stats yet, but those are the stats that you could put them into, and you're like, okay, I can do that. Now, where it gets even more complicated is that in a specific piece of gear, so like let's say a chest piece, I can't have an assassin fire rune of critical twice. I could have an assassin fire rune of critical and an assassin logic rune of critical, but I can't have the same one twice in there. So let's say you get lucky and you get fire in all of your slots. Then it's actually somewhat confusing because then you're like, okay, now I actually have to diversify a little bit because they don't let me just stack the same thing over and over again. Okay. So where the rune changes actually starts. So this is just like a basic overview of the way that the system works. You have to choose a stat you want. You choose based on the elements that you happen to get in your gear, and you start to fill in the slots. There's rune sets, so specific sets give you a set bonus. So like for example, it says assassin. If you get either 4 or 8 pieces of an assassin rune across all of your gear, then you'll get an increased AP percentage and like a chance to deal extra damage. There's tons of these. There's like 30 of them. Sets. Actually more now because they added a bunch of PvP sets. So there's all of that going on there. Now, before it was even more complicated. Like if you thought that was
this is still a mess though. This right. needs to be fleshed out. I mean, I failed the tutorial too. This is something drastic that needs to be fleshed out and at least explained better prior to launch.
It was at least 10 times more difficult to optimize your gear before the change.
It's not
this
easy
is after
now
the
either.
change.
Yeah, And it's
This
still
is after
complex.
Imagine if this chart had numbers in it, because like an assassin rune of logic gave you 10 stat points, but like if you put it in fire, then it only gave you 8 or something like that. So so they got rid of all that. Now it doesn't matter primary, like secondary, tertiary. They got rid of all that. That's been simplified. Getting the runes beforehand was way harder. You actually had to farm specifically a lot of assassin fragments or shadow blast fragments, and so you actually had to worry about which one you're trying to get a lot of or buying off of the commodities exchange. Now they simplified it, so all of the non-set ones have this. Use a single material when you're crafting it. All of the stalker set ones use an of the stalker fragment. So crafting it is a lot more simple. Actually using it is and like obviously I'm dumping level 50. This chart is a level 50 chart. When you're level 20 or something and you're doing it, you actually have like maybe 1 rune slot, maybe 2 if you like got a nice blue from Kelvereth or whatever. On maybe like half of your pieces of gear, not on every single one. So it's a little bit more simple to start with. You don't have rune sets. Well, I guess now they've added rune sets over.
Yeah, you do.
Maybe. You do now because
Yep.
they made them earlier. So it is something that there is a little bit of a climb, but this is actually probably the most complicated gear part of WildStar is actually getting your rune sets correct and doing it in a nice way. And it's something that I don't think that many people even know that much about.
Nope.
So
not yet. Because until recent patch notes, this was exclusively high level stuff. But now it's creeping into the lower levels over the last couple of patches. This is. I'm going to suck at this game. But that's okay. That's all right. It's fun. But anytime there's RNG involved, it's just not going to work. I'm still farming fates. Screw you, Farhand. Don't you dare comment about fate farming.
I mean, the point that I tried to do, the reason why I ended up putting so many damn colors onto that chart all at once was because, like, realistically, a DPS stalker is probably only going to care about Assassin, Shadow Blast, and Weapon Spec. So, like, 3 of those 5 colors that I listed there. I only put in Predator and Preservation because I was like, oh, if I don't put those in, it'll look like there's almost nothing, and there's nothing at all in water, and there's almost nothing at all in air, so if you ever get those, you're completely screwed. Well, no, you're not completely screwed, it just means that you're going to have to pick a rune set that is more defensive in nature.
Right.
It's like a way, realistically speaking, over the course, this is part of, their design philosophy that they've had going. They talked about months and months back that as far as gear goes, you're not supposed to get completely optimal gear immediately. That's supposed to be something that even after you cleared out a raid and you've gotten pieces of gear for all of your slots, there's still room for you to improve by slightly improving. In that case, it was that was back in the day when they had circuit board crafting for everything. So they wanted you to change your chips out and stuff. Now it's like, okay, if I change some stuff, if I get lucky and I get a more optimal rune configuration, then I can do it. But you probably don't need to eke out like 100% of it because at endgame you're gonna have tons of runes. It looks like a lot to have 20 pieces of Shadow Blast, and that is like a decent amount to have in there. It was actually more in beta though. I would say it's more difficult just farming them, which is what they made a lot easier before. Not so much actually putting them into your gear because you had a lot of slots. It was just sort of like, okay, this is something that you're probably going to need a little bit of help with to just figure out where I'm going to put in, and whether that be in an add-on, whether that be in a website or something, just to make it a little bit simpler in your head. But once you've gotten a few pieces of gear filled out with runes, you're probably not going to want to re-customize them that often. So it's not as much of a headache as it seems, especially with how they made them a lot easier to acquire. So
there you go, chat room. You got your or your chart love. We gave you some chart love. The last couple of weeks, we got yelled at for not having a chart. There you go. There's your chart love. On the PvE side of things, a lot changed, and we'll get into some of it with individual characters, but content-wise, higher difficulty encounters and monsters added to the world map. I think that's super cool. Actually gives us a reason to group. If it's used well, it gives us a reason to group while we're leveling. So I think there's a lot of potential there for some cool things. I just hope this isn't like this quest is group 2. Get 2, go do it, come back. I want these to be like actual big encounters, the way they're I think they're describing them here. I think that's the route they're going. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it gives you a viable option outside of questing, possibly. And then there's other things that they could do with it down the road, too, that I love this. I love this.
You're just looking
edition.
for an excuse not to quest, aren't you?
Yes, I am big time looking for an excuse not to have to quest in WildStar. And I'm hoping this is it.
I think based on what the line of the patch note said, it had a little bit about having, I'm doing this from memory, something like increased quest progression, or like along the quest from killing those harder mobs that they're adding into the game. I think that this is something that, when they shifted, remember they took that long break, like where beta wasn't running between like the last summer beta and when the winter beta started.
Right.
One of the biggest change probably that they did system-wise for questing was that they changed kill 10 mobs to a percentage, like kill 100% of whatever. And the idea at the time was that, okay, you'll have different kinds of mob packs. Maybe you'll have a bunch of little mobs. Maybe you have like one really big like boss mob with some guards walking around who's a little bit harder to kill. Maybe you need a group to kill him. And if you kill him, you get like 80% of the quest done just immediately. Because he was hard, you actually had to coordinate with another player or something to do that. And if you're just going to kill the little packs of people around the perimeter of the area, then, well, sure, okay, you'll have to kill a few of those packs before you finish the quest. In reality, like actually doing the quest, it almost seemed like they just took the number and just made it a percentage without adding anything else. So it's like if you needed to kill 10 mobs, every single mob gave you 10%. And so it was just like, what was the point of doing that? I think this is them actually trying to deliver on that promise that they made before of actually having that thing. And like, to be fair, like, I remember one time I was just giving feedback on some random questing area, and I just said, this area has these really big mobs that are walking around that are really hard to kill, but they don't actually give you any quest credit at all. So why not just make them give a lot of quest credit, like you guys said you would? And one of the developers, responded like a month later or something, but he did respond. He's like, "Oh, that's a good idea. Hey, if you have more of these ideas, just give them to us because that would be really cool."
Like, and dear Mr. Siddiqui, here is my cell phone number. This is a fantastic idea. If you have any others, feel free to call. Love, Jeremy Gaffney. No, I love it. I think it's a great addition, and it opens up the ball field.
I really
for more
hope that it's actually like across the board though, and it's not like 5 quests at the moment.
I agree. Pretty big issue, and I was really surprised this one wasn't in the highlights. Maybe it's just me. I thought this would have been a little more high profile. Ever since beta started, way back when, there's been a lot of people. I was one of them that had some complaints and some questions about the body types during character creation, actually creating your character. And people on the internet, of course, ran the gamut of the body types in WildStar are absolutely sexist, and I'm never going to play it. And then I was more on the side of, my character looks freaking weird. Like, my body just doesn't match. It's just weird looking. And am I in a small minority there? Because I could have sworn there were a lot of us that felt this way.
I think before the beta wipe or the forum wipe, prior to them launching like the launch forums that are up right now, I think the second most active forum, besides the general discussion forum, which is always the most active, was the character creation one, just with so many people wanting to put in their 2 cents about exactly what was wrong. Like, this is exactly what you are doing incorrectly, Carbine. Let me tell you from experience as an art director.
Now, and what was weird was they seemed really reluctant to commit to any type of change.
Yeah.
Like, they just shied away from it.
They committed to not.
Exactly. And they're just gonna, I was like, well, okay, that's kind of weird. And then, boom, in unexpected news, there's now multiple body types for all races and genders at character creation. Huzzah! Huzzah. Now, we haven't seen them yet.
Yeah.
So when we get screenshots, we'll, of course, talk about them on a future show, and we can tell them what they're still doing wrong. I mean what they're doing right. What they're doing right. This is a good step. This needed to be done. Because I don't know about you, but maybe I'm like dumb when I play these games, but the way my character looks actually has the ability to make me stop playing a game. And maybe I'm weird in that respect, but I've got to stare at that character or that character's ass or the character's back or their hands if I'm playing first person, whatever. I've got to use that character for potentially hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. And if I can't at least create a character that I mildly like, let alone invested in, that could literally stop me from playing a game. Maybe I'm ridiculous, but I can't believe I'm the only one out there that thinks along those lines.
Yeah, I don't think you're at all alone in there. I think a lot of people felt that way, and I think like even if they're like subtle changes, something, it'll help a lot. One thing that I do want to mention though, because this is something that I didn't realize that many people knew about until recently, because I don't know, maybe everyone doesn't have an encyclopedic knowledge of WildStar like I do. But
why don't you get that chip off your shoulder real quick, Farhan? Why don't you get that chip off there? Just brush it off.
I was talking with Richie Procopio from his Nexus Talk and all the other awesome bug
just
stuff.
Name dropping.
Yes. I was talking with, and he was sending me a message like, oh, I think that they took out, like he was recreating some stuff from the beta weekend. Like, I think that they took out this model on the thing, and that sort of sucks. I left that one, and I was like, no. It actually isn't taken out of the game. Just when you're creating your character, it looks completely different than when it will actually look like in the game. And this is like if you ever tried to create a male Orin. Then they all almost all the faces, they just look really weird. Like there's just something odd going on with them. But if you are customizing the character and then you just back out one step to where you're like choosing the name and the class and everything, all of a sudden his expression changes from the completely blank look to just like like a grin, like sort of a mischievous RN kind of grin. And it's just like, oh, it suddenly looks like 10 times better. And I have no idea why they don't just have like an expression button like on the character creator so you can see, because it actually varies a lot. While you're doing animations, like I know on Reddit recently that somebody posted like a bunch of an album of what his medic looked like in different poses. So it's like it actually changes a lot, like the face, the look of it as they do different expressions, because they have like a lot of like I guess the bones or whatever to actually animate all of that during the animation. It's not like your character just has like the same look while they're doing everything. So I don't know why they don't just have that in there, because the characters actually look a lot better, I think, when they're animated. I'm not talking about some of the walking animations, like Makari female walking animation.
No, just the facial.
Die. But
yeah. Just
but
the body motions made when they have a very visual expression.
Yes.
Where they get hunched over or stand upright, things like that.
I think a lot of players might actually like some of the characters a lot more if they actually could see some of those animations going at the character creator. But, at the very least, adding some more options can't hurt. Hopefully it makes a few people just feel a little bit more at home with that character so that they don't feel like, this isn't really me. And I think that'll help a lot.
Definitely agree. We got a lot more to cover, including class changes, which I know you want to talk about, but I'm always reluctant to talk about these because it could be a 7-hour show when we start getting into individual class changes. But before we get into that, I got to talk to you about our sponsor for today, and that's Hulu Plus. Check it out. Use this URL, huluplus.com/GameBreaker. You're going to get a 2-week free trial. You guys have probably already tried Hulu. I can't think of any of us out there that haven't. I got my wrong screen up here. That is not the image I want. I want to put up a Hulu site. So let me do this. I want to show you the actual service, not just tell you about it. There you go. Check it out. You're probably familiar with Hulu already, but check out Hulu Plus. You can watch current seasons of Modern Family, Daily Show, Scandal, obviously Family Guy, big fan there. New episodes of new shows coming up. Check out, it just dropped today, this one right here, Deadbeat. If you haven't seen the advertising for this one yet, check it out. All new comedy about a pot-smoking guy who talks to ghosts. I don't think I need to say any more than that. You check it out. Obviously, you could use it on your iPad, your smart TV, your Roku, Xbox, PlayStation. If it streams, you can get Hulu Plus on it just about all the time. Service is usually $7.99 a month to get all shows, anytime, anywhere, commercial-free, including kids' TV. But right now, if you sign up at huluplus.com/gamebreaker, you'll get 2 full weeks completely free. That's an extra week on top of the normal special offer. So don't go directly to the Hulu Plus website. You only get 1 week free that way. Check out huluplus.com/gamebreaker. You'll get yourself 2 weeks free. Fantastic stuff. Have you watched The Following at all here, Farhan? Are you a Kevin Bacon fan?
I am a Kevin Bacon fan, but I have not watched that.
Season 1 was so good. Season 2, I'm still up in the air about. So if you haven't checked out The Following, check it out. Let me know how you're thinking too. Is Season 2 doing it for you? I'm not quite sure. Season 1 was so good, though. Tons of great program. Well, Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. 22 episodes. I'm going to have to check that out. Use this URL. Get yourself 2 free weeks. What's the best way to support GameBreaker? Support our sponsors. huluplus.com/GameBreaker. And now we get to classes.
Yes.
Farhan, I'm just going to let you take this. I don't want to spend all night on classes. Guys, we can't go through every change, obviously. There are a ton of changes. So please go and read the patch notes. But there's a few you did want to touch on so that I didn't just skip them. Go ahead. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so first of all, generally speaking, I think there is this giant uproar overall, like, speaking when they changed like to the new amp system. Basically, what they did is they just took a bunch of the old amps and they just rearranged them to fit a consistent layout, because all the classes have exactly the same layout now for their amps. Like they have 3 for the primary trees. You have like 3 different chains that cost 1 point each, and there's like 3 points that you can put into them. The second rank of amps will always cost 4 points per amp, and the last one will always cost 6, except for your skill, which will cost 2. But it's consistent across the board. Whereas they definitely were not at all consistent from one class to another in terms of how the amp layout was. So when they changed some of the layouts, so when they took like say something that used to be a 2-point amp and they made it a 4-point amp, just as a quick let's just get it in there, they doubled the power. They were like, okay, let's take a 2-point amp, let's make it a 4. That sounds about right. Let's just make it twice as strong. And let's take this other amp this one it cost 1 point before, now it's a 6-point amp. I don't know if that ever happened, but 6 times the power or something. But basically, a lot of these things got insane, like the warrior amps and medic amps, especially. Like warrior, I think, had an amp that every time you crit, you would stack crit severity, and it would stack up to 75% increased crit severity. So once they got that stacked up, they just like crit you and you're dead, kind of thing. It's just the damage was completely bonkers across the board because of the thing, and they knew that going into it. They were like, we just want to get it done so that we can get the system ready, and then we'll iterate on the balance on that afterward, which is fine. So now they've done that. Now they've gone through and said, oh, medic amp that makes you have 32% more power for 4 points. Maybe that's a little bit too strong when the baseline is just to let you guys know, a baseline for a good amp is about a little over 1% increase in output per point, and so if you're getting 32 points percent for 4, then that's 8 times too good, which is a lot. So they nerfed them, right? They just went across the board, started cutting them, and people were like, "Oh my God, this is the end of the world" or something. But it happened almost across the board. I don't know what's up with stalkers. I guess. I mean, okay, the numbers actually worked out okay for stalkers specifically. Like, I know that stalkers have an amp that when they're below 50% suit power, they do 12% more damage. Or that's what it used to be. Now it's 8%. But 8% for 6 points actually isn't that
it's
strong.
Yeah,
right?
it evens out over the duration.
But people are like upset because like they only got a 4% cut, we got an 80% cut or something. So it's like, okay, like deal with it. Well, I think that balance definitely is going to need more tuning. It's definitely going to get more tuning going forward. But that is definitely something that happened that was big. Too much power was actually in the amps though before, because like if you actually like I started after that amp thing came out, I started a new character. I started leveling it up just to see how it felt with a new character getting them, especially because a lot of amps come from quests now, and I had already completed those quests, so I couldn't get them before. So I was like, okay, I just need to do this. The game got easier as I kept leveling, which maybe that sounds okay, but it's actually sort of weird when you have a much harder telegraphs and things that you're trying to avoid and everything else, and you suddenly don't have to because you just blow everything up because your amps are so strong. So that was very necessary that they needed to cut down player power like a lot. Because
and this is where I think the game's going to run into some issues that are going to have to be worked out over time. Is there are so many very cool systems, right? I mean, with the runes and the rune sets and the amps, there's a lot of cool subsystems that you look at, and this is really cool. But to balance all of this over multiple classes starts to become a nightmare when you start putting all of this player choice in it. Player choice is great to have. Don't take it away. I love it. But there are going to be instances of extraordinary overpower because of an oversight like, what's the duration on this? Oh, we really didn't think about that. That's actually 4 times the power. That's not what we intended. That is not what we intended. So it's going to be challenging to do this. I like that they're having, these multiple beta weekends to fix it, but I don't expect all of this stuff to be worked out by launch, and I think anybody that does might be aiming a bit high on that one.
I mean, to Carbine's credit, they said like the day that that amp patch came out, Hugh Sheldon posted on the forum saying amps are not balanced. We know that they're not balanced right now because those numbers we just multiplied them, man. We just needed to get something in there so that you guys could have the new system. And so we know that they're not balanced. We're gonna balance them. And so I think that there's still some stuff. Stalkers were top DPS before, and getting a smaller nerf because their amps. A lot of the power actually wasn't in amps though. Like almost every other class had a lot of power in amps. Stalkers didn't at quite as much. So when their amps got pared down to where they should have been, I think that there's going to be just head and shoulders way above everyone else. So yeah, things are going to keep going forward. They're going to keep iterating. They're definitely going to keep doing some of that balancing stuff. Now for specific class stuff, besides the amp stuff covers most of it.
Check the patch notes.
Yeah. well, not like really really specific stuff, but just like some of the stuff that I wanted to mention for medics, especially because medics is they're close to my heart because I did so much damn theory crafting about them.
That's me.
Yes. Quantum Cascade size got just they said that they reduced the size of the first 2 ticks, which is sort of odd to me, but okay.
I'm sorry. What was that sound effect? Ticks, can you do that again?
Is that the one I made?
That is.
I don't even remember. But they said that they reduced the size of the first 2 ticks by 75%, which is what? That's a lot of size reduction for those first 2 ticks. And then the last 2, I guess, are still going to be gigantic. But
that's what.
At the same time, though.
Never mind.
At the same time, though, even though they made them smaller, they moved them forward. So the frontmost edge of that telegraph is always going to be at the furthest point where the 4th tick used to be. So it's sort of weird because now I have a feeling I haven't seen what the actual telegraph looks like, but just from reading it, it sounds like there's a dead zone for the first 2 ticks where if you're standing right on top of the medic, they won't actually hit you, which is actually sort of nice because it's you can actually avoid Quantum Cascade now, whereas before I don't think it was possible to avoid Quantum Cascade. So that's sort of interesting. I don't think it'll be crippling in PvE though because they moved it forward. It's not like you're gonna have to be hugging the boss to get the first 2 ticks, even though they made them small, because they will be moved forward. Imagine a diamond shape 10 meters in front of you. That's what Quantum Cascade's first couple ticks will look like. Empowering probes got nerfed heavily, cut in half, literally. I'm not sure where that's going to end up with because it went from completely mandatory to I'm not even sure if I want it on my bar now. I think in rating it'll probably still be viable because it's buffing 5 DPS basically if you put it correctly. I don't think healers are going to bring it anymore, and I don't think outside of when you're buffing up to 5 people that you're going to look at it. You probably won't put tier points into it either anymore. So that was a big change. Spell slingers, they needed a lot of love, and I think that they're starting to get it finally because they got a lot less reliant on spell surge, which is nice because it was a little bit weird having so much power on that little like 4 casts per minute kind of thing. So that it's pretty nice that they moved some of that power off. I'm not sure, obviously we're gonna have to do parsing and stuff to see exactly where they ended up, but that's nice that they did that. Espers, I'm gonna resist the urge to rant. I'm just gonna say it. It's crazy to me that they made Soothe mobile. Like the Esper heal is now fully mobile.
This was the first thing you brought up pre-show before we were even on. You're like, "Hey, Mike, did you read about Espers?" And I was like, "No, I haven't had a chance to. I'm gonna hit it now." And then you're like, "Oh, well, let me tell you about it."
It's like I don't remember exactly the number it is, but like I think that they would have had to cut it a lot in terms of the actual healing number for it to go, and it got down. It's like a 10% or 15% nerf on the amount of healing, but it's fully mobile for all tiers. Espers just are like, they are such a better healer. Like with just from reading through the changes, Spellslinger's got a nerf on healing. Medic's got a couple really tiny changes, but the main problem with medic healing is that they don't have good focus management. Like they are the worst in terms of managing their resource, and like I didn't see anything really addressing that. And Espers have a fully mobile Sith, which I mean, you guys can pat yourself on the back for complaining so much because you got it, what you wanted. You have your, and I get it. In PvP, it was a pain in the ass having to stand still. They needed it to some extent, but it's just they are so much stronger than the other healers now.
You are so bitter. You are such an angry
to the point
forehead.
where I feel like I should roll an Esper. And I don't really like Espers, but it's like they are such a better healer. But, I have faith. You guys, Carbine, buff medics. Enough medic healers.
It's not even out yet and you're calling for buffs. Alright, moving on. Players can no longer log out instantly in enemy cities. I think we all saw that one coming. There's some odd, funny ones in the patch.
I didn't even know you could do that, but
Uh,
that's pretty cool.
Hey, is there potential in WildStar for, and I think it's funny now we refer to PvE content as raiding. Back in the day, raiding was PvP. That's when you got your people and you sacked the city. Are there potentials for that in WildStar, or is the guards kind of one shot you type deal?
It's actually almost the opposite. When they did the PvP week, like they basically made the Nexus beta testing server into a PvP realm for a week only. And it was sort of crazy because people were killing each other everywhere. Guards, I don't think. I think that they actually said. I think that Jen Gordy said that their intention is that guards on PvP servers will actually be weaker than they will be on PvE servers, which is I think like a step beyond what I've seen other MMOs do, where they actually made the guards much weaker on the PvP realm. When they had a couple guilds right before the beta servers went down on the last day of that PvP weekend. I know there were a couple of exile guilds who were just like sacking Ilium, and they didn't seem to be having a problem with the guards really. They were just sort of like going around killing everyone. So yeah, I think that you definitely could be able to occupy Ilium or whatever, occupy Fate.
So you haven't been able to have
in a military
other oddball things here. You haven't been able to have a space in your character name since I don't think I've ever been able to put a space in ever. So they're going to continue with that, but now they're also removing numbers. Now I seem to remember that numbers were added for a very specific reason, and now they're being taken away. I don't. Was there a reason here?
So I think that the quote, like there was a quote from some Carbonite saying that the reason why we have numbers in our names is because of Mikari names. And I don't remember who that was. He was someone, I think, on the class team, but I don't want to throw them under the bus, so it might have been someone else. I just totally did my time saying it was class team. Anyway, probably the Esper League. No, it was really not. So somebody said that, but then a couple months back on the actual the beta forums before the NDA went down and everything, one of the lore people actually chimed in and said, actually no, the Mikari don't have numbers in their names ever. You'll never see a Mikari NPC with a number in their name because that's not the intention. They must have numbers for some other reason, and I think that maybe that was an internal slip up where the development coding the systems we're like, oh, robots, they have numbers, and the lore team was like, no, they don't, and that wasn't clear until now, and so okay,
now it's clear. No more numbers.
No numbers.
Loot bags from war plots and Halls of the Blood and Sworn have had their rewards doubled. Yes. That's cool. That's cool. All PvP loot.
Especially, I don't know about war plots because who knows where they were at before. But Halls of the Bloodthorn especially, it sort of sucked getting into that compared to Walatiki, because Walatiki was so much faster that you were like, oh, wow. But now it's fine.
All PvP loot bags, this one's kind of neat, now have a chance to roll on the world loot table equivalent of whatever your label is, which pretty much means in PvP you could get almost anything through PvP. I kind of dig that. This goes to what we were talking about last week, is just because, or 2 weeks ago I think it was, if you want to get into both of them, fine. If you want to casually dip into PvE but you're more PvP, this still gives you a chance to get stuff that'll be fine for going and experiencing some PvE every now and then. I like this change. I like this change a lot.
And knowing the econ team, it's not like you're like the best way to get PvE loot will be PvP loot.
Exactly.
Because the econ team is like, remember that rune thing that we just talked about? That's them. And they're like very hardcore about their system. So, it's nice that we have that in there, but I don't think that it's gonna be like, oh my god, I can't hold all this PvE loot.
You didn't like little orange circles on the as the amp icons or the circle layout. Well, now we've got 80 amp icons, so there we go. Who knew? Orange circles.
I wonder how they will
way
fit
of representing
them on that UI, but maybe there's a new UI for amps.
You already talked about the amps balance pass, so we can skip over that. Now there's 1,000 more patch notes that we obviously can't go over. We did talk about the classes themselves, but any show that I'm doing where it's patch notes, I always ask, is there anything cool that you want to make sure we point out that we haven't covered yet in the patch notes? Don't read them all, Farhan. For God's sake, don't read them all. Anything really cool that you want to touch on?
Dom picked the one that I was gonna. Like the next bullet point is the one that I was like, this is hilarious. I have to mention it, and then.
Awesome. Hey, all in all, I like the patch notes.
Yes.
It seems like Carbine is maybe in a patch notes measuring contest right now with a certain alpha.
Someone else
I don't know.
Did some patch notes recently.
Whose patch notes are bigger? Finally, brace yourselves, chat room, as I quote: "Draken women can no longer swim vertically like a dolphin on top of the water because, well, they're not dolphins." End quote. Rest in peace, dolphin Draken women. You were the mermaids of WildStar. Mr. Farhan Siddiqui. You can follow him at Unindel, UNINDEL, where he'll keep you appraised of all the chart-making goodness. Chad is very happy you brought a chart this week. I'm Mike Byrne. You can follow me on Twitter at MagicMan1. That's MAGICKMANN1. Obviously, make sure you've got it locked and dialed on GameBreaker TV, and you're following us on Twitter and Facebook for all WildStar action and all of your favorite MMOs. If you're ready for WildStar and you haven't yet, it's time to pre-order. And with no physical collector's edition, there's no better place to do it than GameBreaker.tv/deals, where you can get yourself 20% off just by pre-ordering, and we've got multiple ways for you to do it. Check out that website for not only WildStar, but all kinds of great software you were probably going to buy anyway. You might as well get a couple of bucks off. Check it out. That's going to be the financial ruin of me. Until next week, gang, stay safe, and we'll see you out on the servers.
GameBreaker TV.